The Denver Nuggets are looking for some help. Clearly outside of the top contenders in the West and with a struggling Jamal Murray, reports are flying on the trade possibilities for Denver. Because let's be honest, they have to get Nikola Jokic some help. The numbers that he's been putting up are incredible, but simply not sustainable for an entire season and playoffs. And even then, it just hasn't been enough in a loaded Western Conference. Two of the biggest issues for Denver right now are three-point shooting and, quite frankly, Jamal Murray. The Nuggets are once again near the bottom of the league in three-point attempts, which has been a theme over the past few years for this team. The percentage is still high, but they need volume, and Murray just doesn't look like the same guy anymore. He isn't good enough right now to be the only other shot creator on the team other than Jokic. Now, obviously, when you look at their numbers, they're one of the best offensive rating teams in the league, despite a lack of three-point shooting, despite not having that other playmaker other than Jamal Murray, and their defensive rating is outside of the top 15, but all the reports and the rumors seem to suggest that they are more so targeting an offensive solution to their struggles than defensive. And surprisingly, at least to me, Zach Lavine seems to be a primary target right now for the Denver Nuggets. They see him as a solution not only to their Jamal Murray problem, where they are just not going to have as much responsibility fall on Jamal Murray, but also their three-point shooting problem, because Lavine can play on and off the ball. And even though he's a guy that over the last couple of years, his contract has basically seemed toxic to the rest of the league, the Nuggets seem to be convincing themselves that he could be their solution. Okay, not to brag on myself, but I think this is where I differentiate myself a bit from other channels on YouTube that talk about basketball. When we're talking about trade stuff, I actually have a really good idea of what's happening and what pieces could be moved, how the contracts work, how the new CBA structure works. So we're talking about all realistic deals here. If you're thinking that LeBron is going to end up on the Nuggets in any of these deals, you're on the wrong channel. But let's talk about the Zach Lavine stuff. And really in any of these big time trades, any of these reports that are coming out, Michael Porter Jr. basically has to be in the deal. They don't have many other big contracts other than, of course, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And Jamal Murray just signed an extension, so he can't be traded this season anyway. Not that I think Denver would really look at trading him. They're still trying to make him more of a reclamation project. When you look at the other salaries, there's not a whole lot else here to work with if they're trading for someone on the Zach Lavine kind of salary level. And all the guys we're going to talk about in this video today are on the Zach Lavine kind of salary level. So Michael Porter Jr., if you're a Nuggets fan and you're looking to hopefully improve the team or see a shakeup in the roster, he's probably going to be in the deal. Now, specific to Lavine, what we're looking at right now is Michael Porter Jr. and Zeke Naji in exchange for Zach Lavine. The contracts work out almost perfectly there. And as I always say with these deals, if you want to talk about, oh, they should add a first, they should add a couple of second round picks, that's fine. But this is the bones of the deal. This is what the contracts would look like. And for Chicago, the upside here is you're getting out of the Lavine deal something that didn't seem all that realistic not that long ago, especially without giving up any kind of draft compensation. And even though Michael Porter Jr.'s deal isn't great, you could see him as a better value asset with where Chicago's going moving forward than Lavine is, because if they get somebody in the draft or one of the younger players really develops, MPJ is just a much better complementary option than Lavine, although Lavine's had a really good season. And maybe you look for some draft compensation here. Maybe you try and get Denver to give up some seconds or a future first round pick. But if I'm Denver, I'm really not trying to give up picks in exchange for Zach Lavine, because even though he's been good, that contract still is not. That doesn't necessarily matter that much to Denver, but still his overall value around the league is certainly limited by that contract. And if Chicago gets a first round pick in exchange for Zach Lavine, I would be pretty surprised. Now, the interesting thing for Denver is, as I mentioned in the beginning, if you look at their advanced numbers, the defensive side of the ball is more of an issue than the offensive side is. And presumably you're trading for Zach Lavine to start. So now you're looking at Zach Lavine, Jamal Murray, a wing, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. And in some scenarios that works better because Lavine is a more consistent three-point shooter. But say what you will about Michael Porter Jr., he does at least bring you size. Not necessarily great defensively, but certainly has better tools than Zach Lavine has to be better defensively, at least throughout their careers. So you are giving up some of that patented size that the Nuggets have had for years with MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and Jokic in the front court. So you kind of have to evaluate how exactly that would help them. Now, of course, the other guy that has to be mentioned here, someone that I think is a real possibility for Denver, someone that has been in reports and rumors for pretty much every team that is contending, that has the possibility of adding a star right now, is Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler would be an incredibly intriguing addition for Denver because he's the best player available that they could actually realistically add at the deadline. It's Jimmy Butler, it's Zach Lavine, maybe a couple of other guys. But if you're looking for a talent upgrade, getting Jimmy Butler is as good as Denver can do. And this is someone that wants to compete for titles, probably sees Denver as a real possibility to be able to do that. Some other teams potentially involved are teams like Phoenix and Golden State. but I think that Denver would actively explore a Jimmy Butler trade. In this scenario, it would be something similar to Michael Porter Jr., Zeke Naji, De'Ron Holmes. Again, those are contracts to make the numbers work. And again, you can throw that first round pick in there because maybe Miami wants to get some extra value out of Jimmy Butler compared to what the Bulls are getting in exchange for Zach Lavine, because Jimmy Butler is on an expiring deal. And yes, that's a negative for Denver because they have to re-sign him. But on the other hand, they don't have to deal with the long-term consequences of the deal the way they do with Lavine if it doesn't go well. Now, obviously for Denver, this falls way more in the other star, another playmaker alongside Jamal Murray category than it does in the three-point shooting category, because you are going from a team that already is 30th in the league in three-point attempts, and you're trading for a guy that never takes threes and is not a good perimeter spacer. Now, granted, like I keep saying, their offensive numbers from an advanced perspective, offensive rating, are still really good despite the fact that they don't shoot a ton of threes, and so maybe you just double down on that. You say, we're going to be this attack the paint, tough, physical team. Jimmy Butler gives us that. He can play alongside Jamal Murray, and yeah, maybe we don't have great floor spacing. Maybe it's Jamal Murray and Jokic are the only two kind of good three-point shooters in Jamal Murray's case, very good so far this year, three-point shooters in Nikola Jokic's case. Maybe those are our only guys, and then you've got Russ out there as well. There's some weird lineups they could put out there, but from a talent perspective, if Jimmy Butler plays, this would be an upgrade for Denver. Now, obviously, they'd have to make sure they re-sign him long-term, because otherwise you're just getting rid of Michael Porter Jr. for nothing, and in that scenario, if you trade this for Jimmy Butler, and then he leaves 4 months later, it's a complete disaster, and quite frankly, could be the end of this era of Nuggets basketball if they screw this up. But realistically, if you're Miami, you're looking around the league, you're trying to get value out of Jimmy Butler, you're looking at Phoenix, they're trying to trade you a whole bunch of nothing and some expirings in exchange for Jimmy Butler. You're going to Golden State, you're hoping to get something out of them, but maybe they're not all that inclined to give up a ton because they know that Phoenix can't give up that much. If you're able to get Michael Porter Jr. and a first-round pick out of Jimmy Butler, is it an option that you at least explore? If things gotten that bad in Miami, that they're that concerned about him leaving, that they feel like they have to make a move at the deadline, and if no other teams step up, maybe this suddenly becomes a realistic option. Now, the complete opposite of that scenario is another guy that has been heavily reported for Denver right now, and that is Cam Johnson, the Brooklyn Nets, someone that is basically every team in the league is trying to trade for Cam Johnson and a couple of other guys on the Nets right now. He is having by far the best season of his career. He's shooting the ball extremely well, and all of these teams, Golden State, Phoenix, Miami, Milwaukee, any team that sees themselves as a contender this season that is looking to upgrade could use Cam Johnson. Even the Rockets, there's all kinds of teams that could use a 6'9" guy that can shoot and is in the middle of the best season of his career. He's a complimentary option. He's perfect. He's signed long-term on a nice, comfortable contract for you. So in this scenario, Denver would do Michael Porter Jr. again. They could maybe trade for Cam Johnson without giving up Michael Porter Jr., because I think the Nets maybe have some concerns about bringing in that contract in the first place. There's a couple of scenarios where they could piece together some contracts, but it would be difficult. I have this scenario on screen because I don't think that they're going to be able to just tear a bunch of pieces apart on the roster just to add Cam Johnson from a contract perspective. So it would be MPJ and a first for Cam Johnson, Anthony Melton. You can take away the first round pick if you want to. That's fine. Obviously, I just had Jimmy Butler basically as a part of this trade where you get Michael Porter Jr. in the first, but I don't think the Nets are really going to be all that interested in bringing in the contract of Michael Porter Jr. So if you're Denver and you really want Cam Johnson that bad, maybe you have to attach a first, because the Nets have said publicly and privately and everywhere else they're not taking on long-term contracts beyond 2026, 2027 because they want to have free agency cap space. They want to have flexibility. They see this as like a 2-year turnaround, really quick rebuild. And so that MPJ contract probably isn't all that enticing to them. And apparently the price for them currently is an intriguing prospect and a first-round pick or 2 first-round picks in exchange for Cam Johnson. This, compared to the Jimmy Butler trade compensation, I understand why that can look weird. I'm just trying to put together some circumstances that make sense for each of these teams and really have conversations around the trade rather than to literally predict exactly what the trade is going to be. And the funny thing for Denver is I think you could argue that bringing in Cam Johnson is a much better idea than bringing in either Zach Lavine or Jimmy Butler. I understand that Cam Johnson doesn't help you solve the Jamal Murray problem, where he just hasn't been the same guy basically since they won the title, and can't obviously help you with that as a playmaker on the ball the way that Jimmy Butler and Zach Lavine can. And maybe if you're a Nuggets fan, you don't even think he's that much of an upgrade over Michael Porter Jr., but he's having an unbelievable season, and I think shooting-wise would really, really help Denver. If I had to rank these in terms of the order in which I would like to do them if I was Denver, I would go Cam Johnson, then Zach Lavine, then Jimmy Butler, which is kind of crazy to say, but I just can't see how they create sustainable offense with further limiting their three-point shooting by bringing in Jimmy Butler. Now, there are a bunch of other guys that have been mentioned as trade possibilities for Denver. I'm talking about like the Jordan Pooles of the world. I saw a DeAndre Hunter report. There's all kinds of stuff happening, but I definitely think that Denver is going to make a move of some variety, whether it be the guys we talked about in this video, the guys in all of these other reports that are flying around. Something is happening for Denver. There's no way they can go into the playoffs with this as their roster with the season that Jokic is having, and I think these are all really intriguing possibilities.